Hi. Just put this down. Hi, it's good afternoon. It's just come up to midday. And I'm going to be talking about a thought leadership piece around implementing cybersecurity and security-minded thinking within our BIM processes. So today, we've been talking a lot around data, how we manage our information, how we execute that information, and how we bring that information into a smart infrastructure digital environment. But one of the things we've not been talking about is how we manage this information in a secure way to ensure that the end users, our clients, ensure that they are not impacted by any of the threats that are currently facing us in the market. So for the next 15 minutes, I'll be taking you through around some statistics which focus around the cyber incidents that have happened within the region. Then I will move on to debating around how important it is for us to start thinking about cybersecurity in our design processes and how we work safely in the common data environment space. And then finally, we'll be putting together in terms of how we've been planning for this process to ensure that designs move from a physical state of mind to a digital environment. So compared to 2018, there's been an increase in 12% in numbers of cyber incidents that have been reported recently in UAE. Just in the first quarter of this year, there has been 23.4 million malware incidents that have been captured through the security networks. Well, that's quite a big number, and there's been a 12% increase. So two big things we need to be thinking about. UAE is one of the top 20 economies in the world, and with the second highest smartphone adaptation rate compared to countries like Singapore, cyber criminals are looking for opportunities to target countries like UAE, where there is numerous emerging developments in technology. What's interesting, though, as we talk about digital infrastructure and digital transformation, is that 75% of the digital assets that belong to UAE organizations are actually hosted outside UAE, of which 8.6 of these are critical infrastructure sites. So what does this mean when it comes to our infrastructure, our assets, and how we make them secure and safe? So isolated computing, if you can imagine, is all about end-to-end physical devices. What this is about is connecting a physical asset on site through a cable into a process so the process can react to the data it's receiving. It's the most secure way of managing data. So an example of this would be an instrument on a site that's connected through a cable, and that cable then transmits data, and that data is then used to process how we manage the sites. Closed network computing, though, is about describing how data acquisition systems work. So SCADA systems are an example of a closed system where information is gathered from a number of places around different parts of sites and processes and put to a central location to manage that data. But as we now start to move into a cloud-based computing, which is what we've been talking about in the digital twins discussions, what we need to be aware of is that the information that we're trying to make available in real time needs to be cloud-based. And this is where the high residual risks do actually reside. In the last decade, we've seen a rapid development in domain of information technology. We spoke about information technology as we were describing it in the BIM network. And to us, in this market and in this industrial process area, we see this as what we would call industrial automation control systems. Operational technology is a hardware which changes states of physical devices through some direct reporting. So describing before around instruments, gathering data and transmitting that data, that's what we describe as an operational technology device. But internet technologies does promise some enormous gains for us all, particularly in the design and build environment. And it will result to driving down costs. But with gains in IT, we will face challenges around security of information. In 2017, a malware application named Triton did attack on a lawn oil giant, and it came to close to triggering a very high pressure explosion of toxic hydrogen sulfide. If the attack had succeeded, then it would have taken a considerable amount of toll on businesses and potentially risk to human life. It is estimated that 75% of our regional oil and gas companies have operational technology embedded within their infrastructure, which is likely to be compromised if we don't start to secure these assets in the right way. According to IBM, transport is the second most targeted industry and is up from 10th position in 2017 up to second. In UAE, transport remains a significant part of our business activity to achieve our 2030 vision, and with complex transport networks and high volume of real data, these assets are highly compromised. We're seeing a shift in the water industry. Our processes are moving from conventional treatment processes to much more automated driven processes. And this means that if these infrastructures are attacked in a way from an external intrusion, then it has a high impact to water quality. And water quality is what we drink. We drink water. Recently published article from Dark Matters in June 2019 reports that UAE organizations are exposed to weak credentials and therefore the critical infrastructure remains a frequent target to threats. The report then goes on to saying that security weaknesses, trends in campaigns, and the security posture of its client base reveals that virtually all industry sectors remain vulnerable. So what that's saying is we're trying to transition our businesses from a physical device world to a digital world. And we've been talking heavily today about smart cities, digital infrastructure, automating processes, and how we best make use of that information. But what we're not talking about is how we transition from a physical state of affairs to a digital environment. So in the modern age, excuse me, all organizations are going to see some relative intrusions of cyber-related threats. Cyber attacks do have a devastating impact, not only on the network systems, but as we start to increase our digital infrastructure in a more sophisticated way and start upgrading old devices during maintenance review cycles, what we need to start talking about is how we will deal with these challenges around keeping our infrastructure safe and secure. BIM Processes is all about sharing data for those who are responsible for delivering designs to create a digital representation of a physical and a functional characteristic of a model, like we've been talking about today, digital twins, to a fully federated environment. As we start to move our designs from a traditional 2-based designs to a 3D geometric designs and up to a 7D facilities management infrastructure sites, what we're going to be starting to see is that transition is what we need to be managing as organizations. So to create a digital ecosystem, it's really vital for us to all understand what data security means. And this is not about managing IT infrastructure security. This is about managing the transition of technology as we move ourselves from a geometric design-based models to much more federated 7D environments. Operational technology means that we have to start to learn how to collaborate better in common data environment spaces. And at front of our mind, we should be focusing around how to manage this information in a secure way. You can imagine, as you will see there, those who are involved in the common data environment extends out from supply chains to contractors to clients and to organizations. And that spider diagram tends to expand more and more as we start engaging with the supply chain through our procurement strategies. But putting all of that in context, we have to start thinking about how do we manage all this data in a secure way. So PAS 1192, a code of practice, was first published in 2013, which was addressing the need of the industry in an immediate way. This is a British standard institution ownership model, and what it does talk about is how we manage the transition of change between technology of physical world to an operational outcome. Now, where we do want to get to is a point where we have an operational technology that we can benefit from. So assets, we talked about smart cities today. But one thing we didn't talk about is how we transition what we currently have into a smart way. So how are we going to manage that transition? And these guidelines do help us try to understand that working in common data environment. Parts 3 and 4 were released in 2014, which covered the operational expenditure of capital programs and how we work in the COBE environment. But the most important document that was released out was the PAS 1192 Part 5, which talked about how we manage security in common data environment. I speak to a number of clients, a number of organizations, as part of my role is always around trying to share best practice as well as practical advice. And I find that not many know about these guidelines, which are now starting to become an ISO requirement shortly. There are organizations that have contributed to this. MottMacDonald, Crossrail, HS2, and other organizations contributed to the development of these documentation and guidelines because we recognize that transitional space is a very important area for us to work in. And that's because what we've been talking about today is the future of our infrastructure, but how we're going to manage that transition from today to tomorrow is something we've not been talking about. So the framework, in essence, looks at how we manage our information better. Organizational policies, getting those aligned with information responsibilities, and what we mean by that is understanding who is doing what in the delivery program. But most importantly, we tie those supply chain requirements into the procurement strategy, so everyone is clear of their roles and responsibilities in this framework. The framework then goes on to talk about how we plan in that design space. How do we best execute the right software, the right modeling environment that everyone can collaborate in, but more importantly, how we plan for security in those models when we start sharing data with multiple organizations. This means that if we start following some best practice, some guidance around how we will do this, we will get to an opportunity where our designs will be thinking around security. Operationally, it will provide a huge amount of resilience, but more importantly, it will start to educate our people. Cybersecurity is relatively a new concept, and new legislations are dropping through various countries, including UAE. But what's important is for us to get to a journey where we have a safe and digital space of environment. Our people need to walk alongside us so they're educated in the legislation, but as well as the security threats that may impact our infrastructure. So we talk about digital transformation, and we talk a lot around how we're going on this digital journey. But for me, it's about what we're going to do with the technology. Technology is moving ahead of the curve, and we are working in an age where we're connected to digital economies. So technologies are no longer merely an extension of critical infrastructure, but plays a big enabling part in our core offering of services. In 2019, June this year, UAE launched its sort of cybersecurity strategy. And this strategy has 60 initiatives and 5 different pillars. What we need to be doing now is trying to understand how that strategy has a direct impact in how we manage our information in the world of digital technology and digital transformation journey. So on that note, I would just like to thank you for listening around this particularly thought-provoking piece. It's something that is very passionate to me. I've been with MottMacDonald for just over 8 years, and in that time, I've worked on some of the largest design and build projects across the business, as well as the globe. My 18 years of career spans across multiple sectors. I've had the opportunity to work in client organizations, contractors, as well as consultants. But right now, what's important for us and our business, and for all the businesses here, is to start thinking about how cybersecurity is actually going to be impacting businesses and our infrastructure going forward. So for the past 8 months, that's exactly what I've been doing. So thank you.